Welcome in. It's our Thursday edition of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk Radio, coming to you each and every day here on KDSJ 479, Monday to Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. And we've got a packed show today, as at 1:15 we're going to have on contributing editor of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, Steve Andrews. Time to talk a little Razorback softball. We'll see what Steve has to say about Courtney Deifel and the coming week that her program is about to embark on, I believe, their last home series in Fayetteville. So we'll see how all those things, what's in store for the softball Lady Hogs. And then at 1:30, we're going to hop back on the Caravan as the OTH bus makes their way to Gainesville in the Swamp. We're going to catch up with our good buddy of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. We'll talk to him and see what's the expectation in the Swamp in year two under Coach Mullen. But I want to bring in briefly my producer, co-host, Demigod. He's known as my home guy. Arkansas announced yesterday, and this is something that I think is really big. It's been talk all year, every year around the state. Arkansas should play the in-state schools. They should play the in-state schools. Well, Hunter Yurachek and the Chad Morris Sarah have taken a very, very big step, as they've announced in the year 2021. They will be hosting the UAPB Tigers. Lions, I should say. Talk about Demetrius and how, we starting to take strides in doing what a lot of other states and school institutions have been doing for so long, and keeping the money in state by playing interstate rivals.
Exactly. I think they're still following the motto "One Razorback." I think he's really trying to bridge that and build that culture. I guess I read something about 65 years since there was an in-state game. So I think he's really just trying to build that culture and build that SEC vibe with having an in-state rival. I would have liked it to be A-State with a more challenging game, because I think when you look at University of Pine Bluff, there's still a big athletic gap.
Right.
But I think it's a step in the right direction. Was it the right exact choice that I would have made? Probably not. But I think it was a step in the right direction to at least appease people. And not only that, to shine light on HBCUs. I think it could be a great thing for UAPB to really market not only their football program, but their band program and the university. So
absolutely,
it can go both ways.
Yeah, because even if they don't come out on top, and one wouldn't expect UAPB to beat the Arkansas Razorbacks, if they're able to just compete on a level that's acceptable for the young men that they're recruiting to their conference. I think that's going to all be a win-win situation. And like you said, it gives the state of Arkansas a chance to, kind of embrace some of the in-state talent, some of the in-state institutions, and also to silence some of the critics. I'm just going to be honest, Demetrius, silence some of the critics, because here over the last couple of years, Arkansas has been kind of in that football slump. You've heard a lot of the grumblings. Well, A-State can beat Arkansas, and I wouldn't doubt if UAPB can beat Arkansas, and rightfully so. They hadn't been up to the standard that you would think being an SEC school, but at the same time, I've always felt Arkansas had adequate enough talent to beat any of the in-state programs, in particular A-State and UAPB. And that's not a knock on both of those programs. It's just you would think in the SEC, bigger, faster, stronger players are going to come to this conference. And even Arkansas's, most underrated player should be able to go to like an A-State or UAPB and have a tremendous impact, as we've seen multiple young men that leave the program and move on. But I'm really excited for that 21 schedule, because when you look at that, now you have UAPB will be in Fayetteville. I believe Texas comes to Fayetteville in 21. Alabama will be in Fayetteville. LSU will be in Fayetteville, as will the Ole Miss Rebels. Talk about a home schedule, for this program, and ironically will be year 4 of the Chad Morris era, where not everything's about his recruits, his culture, the type of kids that he's been trying to get in here. So you would anticipate, high expectations going into year 21, and with that schedule, you think tickets are going to be hard to, come by?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's the year they play Notre Dame too.
Notre Dame's next year. They go to South Bend in 20.
In 20. Okay. I think it's good. I think they're headed in the right direction. Like I say, it's good to schedule a cupcake game. So why not the cupcake game be at Arkansas University? So again, I think it's a win-win. I think it's the right step in the right direction.
Well, we're going to take a step in the right direction, take a real quick break, pay a few bills, and then when we come back, we're going to have contributing editor of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette to talk a little Arkansas softball, Steve Andrews. He's up next. It's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins on KDSJ 479. Hey everyone, it's Pat Jenkins here of OTH. That's right, On the Hill with Pat Jenkins, Sports Talk Radio. We come to you each and every day here, Monday through Friday, from 1 to 2 on KDSJ 479. Be sure and tune in if you want to hear about SEC and the Arkansas Razorbacks. It's OTH. Holla. Welcome back. It's our Thursday edition here on the Hill of Patrick Sports Talk Radio, and we're going to turn our attention to the women's softball program here at the University of Arkansas, and we thought we'd catch up with our good buddy and the one that brings us all to 411 when it pertains to Courtney Dyfel and those Hogs, Steve Andrews, contributing editor of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Steve, welcome to the Hill, my man.
How you doing, Pat? Always glad to be here, man.
Let's get off into the softball program. Just coming off this past week, a very, very heartbreaking series lost at the hands of Texas A&M Lady Aggies. But each and every game, Steve, highly, highly competitive, and went down to those last few innings. Talk about going forward. What can Courtney and the ladies take from this weekend series heading into this coming weekend?
Yeah, I mean, this past weekend series has kind of been like the story of the year, and it's where they played well, and they played well enough to win. And I mean, they actually out-hit Texas A&M in all three of those games. Right. Even though they only won one of the three, and it's just they've got to get a little more consistent with some timely hitting. I don't know if you watched, but I think the first inning of game one the other night, we had bases loaded with no outs, and we couldn't get a run at Charles. And that's they've got to just get that consistency down, up and down the lineup. Right now it's a real top-heavy lineup. The first 4 or 5 hitters are pretty consistent. And then after that, you get something every once in a while, but just not a lot of consistency. I tell you, since the SEC started, I was looking a while ago, I was kind of shocked that only one girl is hitting over 300 in SEC play, and that's Hannah McEwen, who's actually hitting 424. I mean, and I got a story that will be coming out in the Democrat Gazette tomorrow on her. Just a phenomenal hitter. But other than her, everybody else has kind of been slumping since the SEC started, and that's kind of showed. So hopefully they can start putting it together right here in the last week or two.
We all know, baseball, softball, you're going to have your hot spots and your dead periods. And, offensively, Arkansas is going through a little slump offensively. But pitching-wise, it seems to me, Steve, when you watch this ball club here over the last few weeks, young lady, Mary Half, who started off maybe kind of in a little slump. When I watched the game on Sunday, kind of, pretty much dominated and had a lot of command of her pitches. Autumn Storm is somebody that's been real consistent. But talk about that pitching staff, and as they get stronger, this has to be a good thing if you're Courtney Dyford going forward once, because as you know, they're going to get hot at some point offensively.
Yeah. I mean, you think back last year, Mary Half was probably maybe the best freshman pitcher in the country, and one of the best pitchers in the country, and won some awards for it. Autumn had a great freshman year. She dropped a little bit last year. She's bounced back this year as a junior and really stepped up and filled that void. Like you said, Mary did. She was kind of a little bit slow out of the gate, but man, she's had some games this year where she has just been on fire. She goes over to Tennessee, who was number 5, I think, a month or so ago, and pitched 15 strikeout shutout against them and just dominant. And you're right, the game 2 against A&M the other night, I mean, she just pitched a 3-hitter shutout through 8 innings, and I mean, it was just almost untouchable. And I mean, so she's still showing that she still has that type of command for the most part. And I went out yesterday to practice, and they have pitching practice indoors. Coach Dyford was actually the pitching coach, so I stood kind of behind the screen where Mary was pitching. And I tell you, you see her on TV swinging that ball. When you're standing right there behind her and watching her whip that ball in there, it's incredible. Yeah, it's scary. I wouldn't want to stand in there with a bat, I can tell you that. But together toward the end, and both of them and Mary to really have a good 1-2 punch. When they go in there against some of these higher teams, heading into the NCAA tournament. So hopefully they can put it together pretty quick now.
Now, I know you just said you're at practice sometimes. When you get a chance this week to watch Mary, and also just to watch the team in general, what's the sense of the vibe that you get? Is it a sense of urgency, or is this team still yet loose and kind of, still just going game by game, day by day?
Yeah, I think, they just seemed yesterday, just getting out there and going to work. Didn't seem like they were uptight or anything. And I think that's a tribute to Coach Dyford. I think she keeps it, she's kind of a low key at times. I mean, she can get a little fired up. But that's just her demeanor. And I think it just carries over. And I mean, I think Hannah McEwen's a great example of that. And you watch her come up to the plate. It doesn't matter if she's having a good day or a rare bad day. She's just so fluid and so confident looking when she gets in there. And when I talked to her yesterday, she just told me that she tries to go up there and not think about anything, just kind of react to what's going on and not overthink things. And I think that's kind of how this team looks at it. I mean, you can see some of the younger girls that do get caught up in it. I mean, I think we do lead the SEC in fielding errors this year. I think that's kind of a product of that, that youth. But I think this team, I think they enjoy being around each other. I mean, if you see them in the dugout, they're playing around with toy dinosaurs or whatever to keep everything loose.
Great.
And and I think that's just the demeanor of the coach and the team. So I think in that aspect, they're going to keep it loose.
Steve, if there's one player, while either watching practice or through ball games that you've attended at Bogle or when they're on the road, if there's one player that you've seen throughout this process, either struggling offensively at the plate, that you just feel like they're about to have a breakout game and then maybe get things started, who's that young lady in your opinion?
Well, I don't know if she's really struggled that much. You know, Danielle Gibson, who had transferred in from Arizona State this year, beginning of the season, man, she was just on fire. You know, of course, it's well documented the home run cycle she did. But, you know, she had got injured a little bit and kind of dipped down a little bit. And I guess I'm looking for her to really catch that fire again. And she's had some of them. She hit a home run about a week ago, big home run. You know, she's got the power. She's got the talent. So I'd say her as far as who I'm expecting. Again, the bottom of the lineup is a lot of young girls that you just don't know what you're going to get game to game.
Great point.
And that's just part of the process.
Talking with Steve Andrews, contributing writer to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, covers Arkansas women's softball for us here on OTH. And also, too, that was a little bit on the men's Omaha side of things. And real quick before I let you go, Steve, I want to kind of talk to you about this season. You know, this is a team that lost 11 players either to the major league draft or graduation. You know, they came back with a very young team, only guys that you really knew that were your big three: Kirstad, Fletcher, and Martin. All have played up to standards, but probably could play a little bit better. Team as a whole, this team seems to be pretty darn good and offensively better than last year, and really speed-wise. Are you surprised by this 35-11 start, 15-6 in the league, or it's just something that, you know, you've seen and read so much about the talent? You knew eventually there were just a bunch of guys that were just waiting to make their name here in Dave Van Horn's program.
Well, I mean, that's the key. You know, Dave Van Horn he reloads every year. I know people are calling this a rebuilding year. You know, we don't – a coach like that, and you see other coaches in basketball maybe or football, you know, the Nick Sabans, they don't rebuild. They just reload. And I think Coach Van Horn has achieved that in baseball. I mean, you can look – I think I saw a list of his 2021 and 2022 recruiting classes the other day that he's already got just, you know, a bunch of studs committed. And, you know, so it doesn't surprise me. And you're right. I mean, right now, this team to me is really peaking at the right time. They may be the best team in the country right now. I mean, you know, 2 weeks ago they went and swept the number 2 team in the country, and then they had a big sweep this past weekend. I mean, just dominant too. I mean, Tennessee came in with I think the lowest ERA in the country, one of the best pitching staffs, and our bats just destroyed them. And I think the question is, and it's starting to be answered a little bit, is pitching. And, you know, particularly after you get out of you know, starting the starters there in that middle relief. But a lot of those guys have really, you know, Stock and, you know, Ramage and some of those guys are really starting to come into their own. And I think that's a key thing. But, yeah, I mean, we've just, as opposed to like I was talking about softball where it's top end, heavy, and then lower end, you don't know. Baseball 1 through 9 can kill you at any time, man. It is. There is no weak link in that lineup. There really isn't. I've been really impressed by Christian Franklin. I mean, that kid is an absolute beast. I mean, talk about 5-tool player, and he's proven it even in the clutch. And, you know, I look at Casey Opus, you know, and I was thinking the other day, he's got one of the lower batting averages in the starting lineup, but I think I can think of 3 times this year he's come up with a game winning.
Absolutely.
And it's just, you know, he's just clutch. So I think this team's got, you know, it all has to fall into place. You got to get some luck along the way to win it all. But I think they've got as good a chance as anybody right now, no doubt.
Hey, and with that, with so much young talent, this future looks very bright. But if you're in the SEC, you have to be in great fear of Dave Van Horn, that Razorback program. But as always, for the softball and your men's baseball updates, thanks for taking time out on the hill, Steve.
Thanks, Pat. Take care, buddy.
All right. That was Steve Andrews, contributing writer to the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. And momentarily, you know, we're about to get on the bus and head down to Gainesville, the Swamp, and find out a few more things from our good buddy David Waters of Gators Breakdown. But we caught up with Florida head football coach Dan Mullen following the spring football game of 2019, and momentarily we'll have his comments. But I want to bring on my good buddy Demetrius before we get on our bus and make our way to the Swamp. And, you know, just check with him real quick. When you think of Florida, Demetrius, first year under Dan Mullen, we've watched Coach Mullen at Mississippi State. What are some things that you're really going to be taking into account and paying close attention to in year 2 of the Dan Mullen era?
I think the key thing he needs is a quarterback in the offensive line. I think he's an offense-driven mind. He's really big on having a high-powered offense, an offense that can really score a lot of points. And I think if he can get those two things, and I forgot who was the quarterback. What's the quarterback's name?
Felipe Franks.
Felipe Franks. If he can turn around, because he ended up having a pretty good bowl game, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure did.
Made some nice throws at the end of that bowl game that really won him some games. So I think if he can make a step, and you know how they are on defense, they're going to have a solid defense. They're going to have a good defensive front. They're going to have solid DB. So again, if they can get that offensive line quarterback position together and really find somebody that can lead the offense, I think Dan Mullen will get Florida back on contending for that East.
Well, like I said, momentarily we'll have up Dan's press conference following the 2019 spring game, but we're going to take a real quick break. And when we come back, the bus stops in the swamp, and we're going to catch up with our good buddy at Gators Breakdown, David Waters. He's up next. It's On the Hill with Pat Jenkins on KDSJ 479.
Turnarounds in college football from a year ago. A 10-win season was capped off with a dominating performance in the Peach Bowl against Michigan. Mate in helping everybody around him get better. Orange and blue game, quarterback in white. We got some trick there is Tony opening things up. The Franks wide open. Nice grab. P-Ron will get the carry, left side. A couple yards. 3-yard pickup by P-Ron and Franks passing. First pass of the game for him. Inside. Back, get the carry. He said they went in after losing 2 games. They didn't feel like they had a lot to play for, and yet they went out and got embarrassed. And after that game, had potential opportunities only to get hurt. Last year got a chance to start after that Missouri game, and what he do? He came out and got hurt, injured early on, and was not able to play the rest of the year. So play Kyle Trask. That was good to see him. As Trask goes to the outside, makes the connection to Freddie Swain, makes a move. On the track. The junior.
Welcome back. It's our third edition of On the Hill with Pat Jenkins Sports Talk Radio. And real quick, before we get on to our next guest, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors real quickly at Lindsay & Associates with an office location in Fayetteville. An office location also too in Rogers, the Baymont Hotel, located at 735 South Shiloh Drive in Fayetteville. Locomotion is located just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And lastly, our newest sponsor, Corey Beck's Custom Painting. And now on to our special guest. You know, we were on our caravan last week as we were going around the SEC like we like to do around here on OTH. And the bus got on today and we stopped in the swamp where we caught up with a good buddy of ours to talk Gators. Gators Breakdown Zone, David Waters. David, welcome to the Hill, my man.
How you guys doing?
Doing real good, real good. How are you doing down there in that sunshine state of yours?
Yeah, it's warming up. It's warming up for sure. You know, off the hills of spring practice, and we'll just be, summertime's around the corner, so we'll just be counting down the days till kickoff.
Talking about warm, I know expectations after Coach Mullen arrives in the Gainesville, does what he does record-wise, and expectation-wise by changing the culture. Talk about year 2 and what we can expect from the Florida Gators.
Yeah, but Pat, the big thing is, you win 10 games your first year, people are at least expecting you to do the same, or even it kind of exceed those expectations in year two. And there'll be some obstacles in the way. Florida's got to four new offensive linemen that they got to get to come around by the time August 24th rolled around in that Miami game. And Felipe Franks, for the way he ended last season, that 4-game stretch to end the season where he had 8 touchdowns and no interceptions, a big win against FSU and a big win in the Peach Bowl against Michigan. You could see if he could follow that up. He had a really good spring. He's probably as accurate as I've ever seen him. But, I think Felipe Franks' improvement is kind of limited by what we see from this offensive line. The offensive line can come together fast, gel fast, and I think we see another big improvement from Felipe Franks. If the offensive line struggles or takes some time to come along, then I think we see maybe some marginal improvement from Felipe Franks. But no doubt about it, he's got the targets, he's got the weapons around him, from a deep wide receiver core led by Tyreek Cleveland, Van Jefferson, Trevon Grimes, and a deep running back stable led by Michael Pirine. I mean, everything's in place for this part of offense to take off in year two under Dan Mullen. And a lot of the expectations, though, Pat, just kind of have been tempered because we just do not know what to expect from that offensive line.
And Dan Mullen's words, you mentioned Felipe Franks and his last 4 games, the 8 touchdowns, the way that they did finish offensively. That hadn't been the case in previous years, as they were hit and miss. Would do the running game great, but the passing game could never come together. Offensively, like you said, David, a lot of weapons that this program down in the Swamp hadn't had. How excited are if you're Dan Mullen and the offensive staff that you do have all that experience coming back, minus a few pieces in that offensive line?
Yeah, Beth. I mean, you go back and look at Dan Mullen's offense, and I mentioned the receiver core. And, Van Jefferson, Trevon Grimes, Tyreek Cleveland, Kadarius Toney, Josh Hammond, Freddie Swain. They kind of move a tight end, Kyle Pitts. So they split him out wide a lot, as more of a pass-catching tight end. So it is, Dan Mullen's not really ever had that number one go-to main target receiver. You may have to go back to 2008 and Percy Harvin, but Percy Harvin was a different animal when you look at college football players. And so we'll see. I expect more of the same of what we saw last year. I think that wide receiver core, the ball will be spread out, running back to split carries. If I go back and look at last season, it was Jordan Scarlett and LaMichael Pirine who almost had the exact same stats as the top 2 running backs for the Gators. So it's all about how do you spread the ball out with these playmakers, keep all these playmakers happy. Hey, but look, Franklin's going to be running the ball as well, and that's kind of to go along with that 4-game stretch at the end of the year. The switch flipped when he became a willing runner, when he became aggressive, when he played with a chip on his shoulder, willing to take hits, willing to go get 3rd and 4th down short yardage first downs. And once Felipe Franks started being a willing runner and a physical runner, the offense opened up. It wasn't as predictable. Defenses didn't know what to key on when it was 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Was Franks going to run it, or did they just drop back and pass it? So as long as Felipe Franks keeps that upper trend, I think the excitement around Gator football and from Dan Mullen and his coaching staff, knowing there's a quarterback that now has taken a hold of this offense, knows what to expect, can change plays at the line of scrimmage. Like I said, the offensive line comes around. I think there's some more excitement to be had.
If there's one position that Coach Mullen would hang his hat on, that you just absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt, each and every Saturday they take the field, it's going to be the most productive spot. What position would that be if you had to choose, in your opinion, David?
I think you've got to go to defensive back and kind of look at what he has there with Christopher Henderson and the return of Marco Wilson. That's going to be the SEC's best tandem of starting cornerbacks, maybe even the best tandem in the nation. Right. Marco Wilson is coming back from an injury. He got injured in the 2nd game of the year against Kentucky last year. But Christopher Henderson, if you look at draft boards right now for next year's 2020 draft, he's projected to be one of the SEC's top draft prospects there. So you may see him as one of the first cornerbacks taken in next year's NFL draft. Wilson bounces back, shows that he's 100% healthy. He probably can be up there too. Just don't really know how he'll bounce back. But you got 2 lockdown starting corners there, and you have to figure out some depth behind them. But as far as starting cornerbacks go, I think that's what Dan Mullen would hang his hat on at being those guys that can really count on week in and week out. And maybe if you want to go to offense, I still think it's running back Michael Pirine. Dan Mullen's offense is predicated on running the ball. Michael Pirine had a choice. He could have went to the NFL to come back for his senior season. Really showed up in some big-time runs versus FSU and Michigan last year. Not really necessarily known as that home run threat, but he had 40, 50-yard runs against FSU and Michigan. So I still think it's that running back position on offense, and there's 2 starting cornerbacks on defense.
Talking with David Waters of Gators Breakdown. Speaking Gators, all the things happen in the swamp with that football program, but, early enrollees, David, are something that all college programs, and especially in football, you get a chance to see. If there was, the early enrollees, the young ones, I've always been taught they're going to bite. They're going to bite when they're young. Who are some of the early enrollees, freshmen or JUCO guys that Coach Mullen was able to get in that maybe showed flashes that you may see having a chance to break that rotation come fall?
Yeah, I still think you can go to the cornerback position behind Wilson and Henderson. You got to start with Chris Steele. He was all the way from California, chose to go to Florida. Right. And as I said, with Wilson having that injury last year, he didn't take part in spring practice. So Steele got a lot of reps at that second cornerback position all throughout spring practice. So he's got some spring experience. He'll go through a fall camp to get even more. So that Florida, even at the nickel, they'll have Trey Dean, who played the number 2 cornerback spot last year when Wilson went down. So Florida's got that top 3 figured out. But if one of those guys needs a breather, or one of those, forbid another injury happens there, Chris Steele's going to be inserted to be that number 2, number 3 cornerback there for the Gators. And another one is Mamu Diabate, outside linebacker, rushed in, however they decide to use him. But I don't know if they'll burn his red shirt or not. I'm pretty sure he'll play 4 games, but he might be too smart of a player, even as a freshman, to kind of keep off the field. He's really smart for a freshman, 6'3", 215. He'll put some. That's what he came in at. He'll pack some more pounds on, but showed really good speed, showed really good instincts for a young player to get some early playing time as well.
When you look at the SEC as a whole, David, already when you look at the early top 25 polls, you see Alabama, Georgia, you see LSU, and you see Texas A&M are probably pretty much the 4 teams that everybody are going to say are the lead 4. How do you see the SEC shaping up? I'm of the belief that parity, with so many coaches spreading around and having the ability to be elite recruiters, parity's starting to creep in. But how do you see the SEC shaping up? Will it be real tight throughout the season, or what's your opinion about the upcoming season?
That's a good question, Pat. I can see the East being a little bit tighter if Florida makes improvement, and it coming down again to Florida and Georgia, just 2 teams big here in Jacksonville. I think the East is probably still a little bit closer than the West. I still think Alabama's a different monster right now. If LSU does get improved quarterback play from Joe Burrow, that can close the gap as well. Him and Franks are kind of on even ground. Had some very similar stats last year, but Florida I think is closer to Georgia than LSU is closer to Alabama. So I kind of think that's where I'm going with that. LSU, the recruiting class are pretty good. I know they got some freshmen they expect to come in, especially at defensive back to come in there and kind of show up some losses that they had. The offensive lines to come around, but it is about Joe Burrow and that kind of reworking of the passing game there. He might even run a little bit more this year too to kind of open up that LSU offense, but. I don't know. Texas A&M lost a whole lot of talent. I don't know if Jimbo Fisher can replicate year 1 success or not. Watch out for Auburn. Every time we count Auburn out, every time we overlook Auburn,
absolutely,
that's when they do their best. So if they get that quarterback situation, I think their defense will continue to kind of be one of the nation's best. If they get that quarterback situation figured out, watch out for Auburn too.
Well, David, as always, love making our trip to the swamp and get the Gator update. But as always, my man, thanks for taking time out here on the hill.
Thanks, Pat.
That was David Waters of the Gators Breakdown. Giving us the skinny.
Hey, man,
the skinny.
I know you're the host of the show, and I don't want to take your shine.
Look at you. Yeah, you can. Hey, I'm telling you. When I'm not here, he's going to start sitting in the seat. In the inside he gives us, my home guy be on point. And it was so ironic that David must have heard what you said before he came in.
I had to bring myself on the camera for this. Hold on. Did I not tell y'all, man?
You have been on the Florida
I'm
wagon
trying
for
to tell
quite a
y'all, I
bit.
know what I'm talking about when I'm talking SEC football. I know what I'm talking about. Okay.
We're momentarily going to get some audio, some videos of some of these must-bust 2020 offers as my producer's going to get that ready because, I mean, he has been, and I have to give him credit. The guy's been on the Florida wagon. I mean, and really, I have to say this, not the Florida wagon. I will have to say Dan Mullen. He's been a proponent of the way Dan Mullen coaches.
Because he got to deal with Jordan. If he didn't have to deal with Jordan, I really wouldn't fool with Dan like that. But
I mean, yeah, I get it.
He came in with the fresh J's, and he had me then.
You remember that day in the media?
Shout out Dan Mullen. You know, my boy brought Kodak to the bowl game and had Kodak down there. So you know what I'm saying. Dan get a little cool points in my book.
Yeah, but like I said, we'll momentarily have Moses Moody highlights, Dalen Terry highlights, and Kennedy Chandler, all young men. Terry and Moody are of the 2020 class that have been offered by Coach Musselman and the Razorback staff. And Kennedy Chandler's a 2021 young man that's also got a UA offer from Coach Muss in the first month on campus. We're just, like I said, we want you to see some of the young men that Coach Musselman will be making and attempting a strong effort, committing a lot of time into hopefully convincing some of these young men to call those hogs and come down to the hill and make Bud Walton their home. But I really, like I said, I'm really impressed with what Coach Musselman and staff have been able to do. Just the energy of all the new coaches that's made their way to Fayetteville. It started with Mike Neighbors, Coach Neighbors. I feel in the coming years, his young ladies will make their way to an Elite Eight, Final Four. I feel like they're going to be the program in the SEC that's about to be next team up. That's what I like to call them. And then when you look at Chad Morris with the class that he was able to come in and recruit in year one, having gone that tumultuous season. I mean, it's not fun going 0-8, 2-10 in the season, but to be able to recruit says, you know, that you're selling a vision that these kids can see, and hopefully you can get some of the fruits of that labor if you continue to recruit at a high level. And then also too with Coach Musselman coming in, his aggressiveness, his resume of being an NBA coach has to pay dividends. At some point, you know, at some point during his time at Fayetteville, he's going to get some of the elite and, you know, do what I think he wants to do, brand the name and brand the school on the national scene and get them back to, you know, what these fans here in the state of Arkansas are accustomed to. Nolan created the monster, and it just has to continue to be fed time and time again. But unfortunately, we weren't able to come up with the audio. We will have that tomorrow. I promise you. I promise you. But we want to close this thing out with a big thank you from our producer, the guy that called it on the Florida deal today. I don't know if he and David Waters talked prior to the interview, but he did a real good job. I want to give a shout out to Gators Breakdown Zone, David Waters, for giving us the Gator Talk, and also to contributing editor of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, Steve Andrews, for talking softball and Omaha Hogs with us here on OTAs. Real quick before we get out of here, our sponsors, Lindsay & Associates, with an office location in Fayetteville. Also, too, an office location in Rogers, the Baymont Hotel, located at 735 South Shiloh Drive in Fayetteville. Locomotion, just below the Northwest Arkansas Mall. And lastly, our newest sponsor, Corey Beck's Custom Painting. Until tomorrow, you know what that is. It's the first letter in the alphabet. It's our 8th segment here on The Hill. Until then, it's On The Hill with Pat Jenkins on KDSJ 479. You guys have a blessed one. Holler. Hey everyone, it's Pat Jenkins here of OTH. That's right, On The Hill with Pat Jenkins, Sports Talk Radio. We come to you each and every day here, Monday through Friday, from 1 to 2 on KDSJ 479. Be sure and tune in if you want to hear about SEC and the Arkansas Razorbacks. It's OTH. Holla.